think that's where I think most men listening to this podcast want to be. Is I don't think anyone wants to be living as a victim that's like constantly entrapped to their circumstances, whether they were when they were super young in a super formable time of life, or whether it happened, when you were in high school or in college. Like these different lowercase t or uppercase t traumatic moments happen in life. No one wants to be the victim, right? So I think we have this choice of how do we get to that path of the victor. And I think it doesn't happen overnight. Like I think that the two of you and I both know this, that there's no easy path to it, right? There's this reality that the obstacle is the way, that there is something intrinsic to the human experience that cannot become whole without pain, right? There is this value of suffering. And I think like looking from a Christian perspective, it's like one of my favorite verses all throughout the Bible is Psalm 23. And it's because of this reality that God promises that when we go through the valley of the shadow of death, fear not, for I will be with you, for my rod and my staff will comfort you. And it's not this promise of I'm going to take you around the valley of a shadow of death. It's you're going through the valley of the shadow of death. There's something about that you have to go through something, and that going through it forms you. And I think that that's one of the things that we all have to understand is there's no man is an island.
Well, how about that?
So what do you
round of
guys think
applause for the
about,
Ohio State Buckeyes winning the national championship. That's what I want
to highlight.
do. We haven't been able to record since they won it, right? We were all wearing jerseys.
What do we do?
Yeah,
Pour one out for the Chiefs? Is that what you want to do? Or
do what for the Chiefs?
Oh,
like I'm trying to be respectful and
moment of silence.
Yeah,
that's fine. Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that was sufficient.
I was only going to let you call it.
Yeah, no, I feel fine.
We would have been here for 45 minutes.
Pretty here.
I was pretty awkward that whole time. I was like, "What? How do I?"
I don't think I blinked. I think I just did.
Yeah.
Well, you were asking something though. I was applauding for the Buckeyes.
That's cool. I was just saying that we had an interesting conversation in a meeting today about shower beers. You ever taken a shower while drinking a beer?
Definitely have. Would highly recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd recommend.
You ever done that, Noah?
No, but I'm down for it. I'd do it.
It was a big thing in college. Like at Ohio State, you have these like huge, what are called suites that have a bunch of rooms off of it. So you have a common area and then a bunch of rooms that they just pack people into because there's so many students. And like you get to know your like suite mates pretty well, but you definitely get to know them better in the showers with beers.
Okay,
talking
so
from
guys,
one curtain to another to another to another.
Should that be our PO this week? Part one of our POs.
I think it should be. Well, it's even better like at the beach, outdoor showers. Like after a long day, you're getting sand off. You just drink a beer.
But what you guys have to do, since you guys have wives, is this: you guys have to not say anything to your wife. You just have to take a shower, have a beer, leave the can in there, and then just walk away.
Yeah. I like it.
And then just see what she says.
I think we can do. Can you swing that? Yeah,
probably.
Yeah,
depends on
no one gets affected.
No,
if I
know,
have a
but it's
shower
just like
beer.
morning though.
No,
like just like what do you?
If we shower in the morning, it's like
they're gonna call someone and be like,
they're really concerned.
Yeah, there was an empty garage beer can in the shampoo holder this morning.
I do shot. I do.
Are you gonna say you do shots in the, in the shower?
No, I do coffee showers more. Like I'll shower with a cup of coffee. Or more than that,
peaceful.
I like pretty much. I'll like take.
I've never done that. That's a great idea.
I'll poop with coffee a lot.
That's an interesting take. Yeah, I've never done that.
That's really relaxing.
Yeah,
that's weird.
I think that's.
I don't think it's normal, but I don't know if it has to be weird.
Okay, so what's if you had to average? What's the average time you sit on the pot?
Very fast.
Know. I just want to put it in.
Very fast.
I'm in and out.
In and out.
Yeah, I'm like I'm a rare
I'd say
breed.
15, 20 minutes.
Nah,
you sit on there for 15 to 20 minutes.
No, probably 15.
Mine's 2 to 5.
10 to 15
tops.
I'm probably in that range, 10 to 15. Yeah. When I was a kid, my dad used to make fun of me because I would come home from school, and the first thing I would do, I was deathly afraid of pooping at school.
Like, I was too.
At K through 8,
Is that real? That's a real thing.
When I was in high school, I never pooped at school. I think for 18 years, I never pooped at school.
Yeah.
So I would come home from school and I would strip buck naked.
Okay.
I couldn't do it. It was the weirdest thing. It was a sensory
When did that stop?
Yeah. That stopped at about
college.
19,
college.
20.
Yeah, college. When I could no longer walk in and just take my clothes off and go poop. But I used to just walk in and all the clothes would come off.
That's a good rhythm, I think.
Yeah, it was great. But now back to the coffee is I will pretty much have breakfast with my kids before I shower. I'll pour an extra cup of coffee and go sit on the toilet and just hold my cup of coffee, smell it, drink it while it's warm.
Yeah. There is something about like a morning coffee.
I don't like consuming anything while I'm on the toilet, to be honest with you.
But you're not really like doing things for 10 or 15 minutes while you're sitting there. Let's be honest. We're like sitting there.
I know. I'm thinking through.
Right?
I'm thinking it through.
Are you constipated? Are you perpetually constipated?
I'm like wanting to get in and out.
Get you some stool softeners.
What do you feel like doing anything? I mean, what you're acting like I'll watch like a YouTube video.
Oh, so you're
yeah. I'll listen to some podcasts.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
But nothing's
my
going
wife
in my
hates
mouth.
that I use my phone in the bathroom.
Is that all? Wait, is that weird?
Yeah. Is that weird?
Well, I don't know. Use your phone, I think it's weird that you use it for 2 to 5, like 1 to 2 minutes. You're in there.
Yeah, I'm on a mission. Like I get in there and I get out.
But you have the time to pull your phone out of your pocket and sit there for 1 to 2 minutes.
Oh yeah. Because I'll play a podcast that was already playing. Any like little breaks
like
I can get.
Short YouTube short.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
To keep myself caught up. This is interesting. I don't think about my rhythms.
Is this
all the time? Shower beers aren't a part of my normal rhythms.
You're gonna ask if this.
I think it's totally okay.
Penis getting crushed, and you're gonna ask if this one's okay.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, cool.
No, I think it's okay.
Okay. Cool.
You want to talk about anything else?
Creatine gave me the shits.
Creatine.
I started taking creatine this week again.
It increases water weight substantially, right?
It basically your muscles are like,
to increase.
I don't know what creatine does actually.
Your muscles are basically like a sponge. Without creatine in them, they don't get very big. So like if you take creatine, what it does is it basically acts as a sponge with water where it fills up with water.
Got it.
And so it increases performance in the gym. So you can lift more weight, you recover faster, but then also your muscles pump up a little bit better. Yeah.
A lot of people love it.
So
I don't need any more weight on me.
Yeah.
One of the side effects, though, if you don't take it with a full stomach, is you get diarrhea. And so both days of the men's retreat this past weekend, I had
tough
shits.
Tough,
dude. That's horrible.
And it was like battle shits. You ever been in there with someone else when you're both in the stall next to each other, and it's like, and they're like, and then it's like.
To be honest, I don't know if I've ever recognized it as a symphony going back and forth. But the fact that you called it
Ben and I
called it battle shits?
Yeah, Ben.
That's pretty good.
Ben Huber and I would play battle shits.
Okay, that's kind of funny. That's kind of funny.
Yeah. So,
man, I got so many thoughts on that.
Well, cool.
We should probably move on.
Yeah, I think
I just have so many things to say there.
Here we are.
Maybe into like whatever we got today. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Last time it's been a little bit. Last time we were in here, we were talking about redeeming failure. And good thing the Buckeyes didn't fail that night, though. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Another moment of silence for the Chiefs every time we bring up.
No, we can't do that. I think that we can do a different pot on that. But I think the Chiefs still.
They got 4 more in them.
I don't think you want to like.
More?
Patty has 4 more in him.
You think he's got 4 more in him?
Is that crazy? No, how many did Brady win?
He's playing footsie with me right now. He's trying to break it.
All I'm saying is that
he's trying to break it.
The last time the Chiefs got blown out in the Super Bowl like this, you know what happened? They went and won 2 and went to a third. So
that's true.
I think like
how many did Tom win?
How many did Tom
7.
win? He won 7. He went to 10.
7 and 3.
I think. Okay, so then Pat has 3.
He's currently
Pat
3 and 2.
has been to 5. He's won 3, so he's 3 and 2.
So 4 more would be 7. Mm-hmm. I think he will tie Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a chance he could beat him, but he has at least 4 more in him.
The tough one was 2020. So that was a double loss.
Tampa Bay.
For Mahomes. So you lost to him.
And he gained 1.
Yeah. So, and it was head to head. So that's tough. But
it's tough.
That's all right.
Tough.
So,
well, yeah, they're going to learn from that failure. See what I did there? So we're going to tackle. I just think we had a lot to say, Noah.
Sorry, I just said
that's really good. Actually,
it's pretty.
I saw you did.
Yeah. There's some talent there. There's some talent.
It's Brad's show. We're just living in it.
We talked. we talked last time about how we could do like I don't even remember. We said that we could do a bunch of episodes on failure, and I think a part 2 is probably worth tackling. And so Noah, I know you prepared some. You want to launch us in? Redeem failure. Part 2.
Okay, so this was actually, and it's fun. I rarely do I like go back and listen to an episode, right? Like, how many of you guys go back and listen to an episode? You guys do that very often?
Not like full episodes. It's hard to get like back and get into the. But I listen to feedback.
For feedback. So I'll listen to usually when we post one, I'll listen to it that day and kind of hear how we're like studying film. But that's about it.
Yep.
Yeah. So I went back and listened back to this podcast, and I was blown away because one, it just showed kind of like how fast things are moving when you're on a podcast. But then two, so I made the claim last time we were here that I was like, you know what, we're going to come back to this without asking you guys. So I just said on there, I'm like, we're going to do part 2. And you guys are like, well, now you got to do part 2. So when I listened back to it, what I noticed was Sam kind of 3/4 of the way in talking about failure and talking about this reality that we have a lot of people in our world who are very famous who have these moral failures, and that's becoming commonplace. And we were talking about why. About 3/4 of the way through the pod, Sam asked the question, what basically like, well, he more so said this. It was more of a comment. And he said this. He was saying basically like, there are things that have happened to me as a child that no kid should ever go through. And I've then kind of developed behaviors and attitudes and actions that and habits based off of trauma that's happened to me as a kid. And he was kind of making this point and said, so how do you kind of, the point he made from that was, how do you get out of that? And I kind of jumped into some quick 3-word like catchy thing that made it like easy for somebody to take home. But we jumped out of it so fast, and I realized that is a huge topic right there that we didn't dive into at all when it comes to failure. And then Brad, towards the end of the episode, you started talking about this reality of disposition versus imposition. And I think basically it laid a great framework for this episode, because there's so much more to talk about around failure. Like, we can all agree, and I don't even think we said this in the last episode, that every person that has a grave moral failure doesn't want to have that, right? Like, we would all agree that no one who has had a grave moral failure wanted to be a failure or wanted to fail in that way. Nobody sets out to cheat on their wife. Nobody sets out to spend all their money on gambling. Nobody sets out to drink too much alcohol. This isn't something that people desire, yet they find themselves in that place. And I think for a lot of men listening to this podcast, and for a lot of men just in our society right now, they're asking that question like, I don't want to fail. Why do I keep failing? Why do I keep watching porn and I don't want to watch porn? Why do I keep masturbating? I don't want to masturbate. Like, they're asking these questions. Why is this happening? And I think for so many of us, we live our lives not recognizing that a lot of that stems from some traumatic experience that we might have had in our life, right? Some traumatic realities growing up. And it could be what they would call like a capital T trauma, which is like a parent dying or something really tragic happening and that you experienced. Or it could be a small T trauma, like the reality that we just have desires and needs that sometimes weren't met because our parents had our siblings to watch, or our parents were working and to provide a living. And it wasn't really like their fault, but we experienced not necessarily the love or support that we needed. And so just to lay all that out, the conversation that I want to have today is a little bit around that, but really around this reality that once we recognize the why, like the trauma, the thing that's happened to us, what do we do from there? Because I think a lot of times you have two extremes. You have the guy that says, okay, you know what? Screw all of that. I'm never going to I'm going to forget like it. I'm going to act like it never even happened, right? Or you have the guy that's like, no, this happened. And it's almost like they turn inward and they're like, I just can't believe this happened to me. And then they try to call that healing, but they never get out of it. And they just blame everything on that thing that happened to them in their life. And so I want to dive into this question because we didn't do that in the first episode. Like, why did Carl Lenz fail? Why did he do that? Okay, he started pointing towards in his podcast, right, this trauma that happened to him in his life. But why are us as men failing? And I think we can get into that the trauma conversation. And then two, what do we healthily do with it to get out of it and be the men that we want to be?
Yeah, I love it. I love that. I love the process that is required just in maturation of actually just looking at all of the things that have happened between where I'm at now and where I was then. So just like looking at like whatever time frame you want to start with, you look back and you're like, between then and now, here are the things that happened to me. Here's how I responded. And like, actually like a mark of maturity is seeing the ways that you responded in like positively and reinforcing those, and seeing the ways you responded negatively and beginning to root those out. But I think that what happens to us as men is when we look back in that time, there are certain parts of that story that we just don't really want to touch. That when we look at where we were at then and where we're at now, something happens that like just rocks us. It changes a paradigm. One of the things that I ask about a lot when I'm giving talks to men's groups is just, do you remember the first time that you became self-conscious? Like, do you remember like the first time, and most guys can, like the first time that there was something about you that someone mocked that you didn't know to be laughable, right? Like you didn't know that you were like as chubby as you were, or you didn't know you had a stutter in elementary school, or you didn't know that when you answered things, you always said this certain word as like you were leading into the answer. Like just that first time that like something comes at you like that, and the way that it shifts something in you. And of course, there's like far more traumatic things that happen in our lives than those. But even thinking about like when I think about that first time of being self-conscious, just the way that like takes your breath, like it's like, whoa, like I kind of want to hide. Like, I don't know if I want to hide or fight or both, or I think that just to kind of lay a foundation when you were saying that, Noah, and my response was like, I love that the process of maturation makes us look at things, but we have to look at the things we don't want to look at and how maybe we were failed or did fail, and how now that failure, whether it was from someone else to us or us in a situation we weren't ready for, how that failure now can actually translate to the failures we find ourselves in.
Yeah. What is like I feel like one of the most, one of the most human responses, whether it's for right or for wrong, with pain or hurt or being wounded, if we're going to use that word, I think the biggest responses is whatever that was, I don't want to feel that again. Yeah. Right. Like it's this almost kind of this deep-seated conviction or belief or promise to oneself of whatever the heck I felt in that moment, I'm going to do absolutely anything I can to avoid feeling that way again. And so I think there's, again, we can discuss right, wrong, how does that play out in life? But I think, I mean, if I felt pain, what do I want to feel? Like pleasure. Right? Yep. And so why do men, I think, most often gravitate toward things like pornography or fantasy or like greed or whatever? It's because all of those things are associated with dopamine. Right? There's this, and it's like this, the craziest thing about dopamine is it's gone once you attain it. Right? You can actually, it's like this thing like dopaminergic urges. Like the dopamine that's released in the pursuit of something is actually oftentimes more pleasurable than the attainment of whatever it is. Like I think about this Yeti. Like for a long time, I was like, I need a Yeti. Like I want a Yeti so bad. And once I have this Yeti, I'm going to feel amazing. I'm going to feel perfect. I'm going to feel so happy about myself. I'm going to look around, all these people are going to be like, dude, look at his cool Yeti. I'm going to feel like I belong. And then as soon as I bought this Yeti, spent $50 on this Yeti, I'm like, oh, I'm so cool. And then that lasted about 10 minutes. And then I realized, wait, I don't have $50 anymore. And no one thinks I'm that cool anymore. Yeah. Right. Like there's this reality of every single thing we do like that. It's like, okay, even if it's for the 1,000th time, like pornography is going to fill this void. And then as soon as I do, it's this deep crash. Right. And so I think it's something that as you guys are speaking this, that's what the kind of started to go off in my head a little bit is like when we experience these deep moments of hurt or failure, it's kind of, I think all of us promise ourselves in some way, I do not want to feel that way again. And so I'm going to do the exact opposite of it. And I'm going to become like a narcissist, not intentionally, but become narcissistic, or I'm going to become someone who only tries to attain pleasure and tries to avoid pain. Like, I think this is the tendency as us as men is to try to find, how can I fill that void by never experiencing what that hurt was again. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and that process eats its own tail, right? Yep. So as we try to avoid the pain, we actually put ourselves in a more painful place later. And so it's like a corkscrew downward where I'm just returning actually to the very dispositions that hurt me before by seeking the pleasures that are avoiding pain momentarily. Yeah. Like the best thing to do is take it like face to face, like engage it, like not to try to dance around it. The only way is through. And the other thing that you were saying, Sam, that I think is worth us thinking about just as men in the society today, Blaise Pascal, in one of his one of his books, he explains a thought experiment about a man that's addicted to gambling. And he talks about like this man that has an addiction to gambling. If you were to just give that man the maximum amount of money that he could have ever won, he would be dissatisfied.
100%. Yeah.
And if you had him continue to play the game with no ability to win, he'd also be dissatisfied. So it's not just the action of gambling that he enjoys. And it's not the attainment at the end. It's something in this in between of like this mystery that he's pursuing that actually keeps him in the addiction. And like, it's some fantasy that he's pursuing that like he almost has to believe what he knows wouldn't be real if he actually thinks about it. Like he has to think, if I would attain all that money, I would be satisfied. But once you would remove gambling and give him that, he wouldn't be. So like, he almost has to live in this fantasy, non-reality, in order to just get on with the next action. And like, it's hearkening back to other things we've talked about, but I thought I'd at least lay that out. I think the two things are, when we try to avoid that pain and not go through it, that action eats its own tail and we find ourselves back in a worse place than where we started. And the other thing is that we have to commit ourselves to understanding that whatever we're pursuing that is finite, even if it's good, and especially if it's bad. Like it's never going to be the thing that satisfies. Like, and again, even do the thought experiment. Give me as much of that as I could ever imagine. You'll know like that's not satisfying. So what are we pursuing? And like, and when we put that and lock in, when we put that in the right place and lock into the right thing, we'll find ourselves in a different place with failure.
Well, and I think we have to, so Brad, that example that you just shared is sweet because there's a reality that with the gambler, it's not a selfless or righteous pursuit that he's pursuing. Like he could be written that check and he would continue to gamble. Definitely. He could also have all stacked against him, and he probably still would continue to gamble. And so you have to ask that question, why? And I think that's so relatable to so many guys because it's like in my life, I just have been going through a lot of this reflection over the last 2 years. And I kind of recognize this pattern in my life over specifically the last 5 years where I would get ever since COVID hit, when I would get stressed, all I would want to do is literally like go into a dark space, watch a movie, and like eat pizza and ice cream. That's like all I wanted to do. Like every time I would get highly stressed or highly like almost exhausted because of some stressful or some intense situation I was just in, all I would want to do is go in a dark room, eat pizza and ice cream. And what I began to realize was, just through the help of some really awesome mentors over the last couple of years, is this reality that was a behavior that I exhibited in one of the most stressful events of my life. Like I can remember to this day when my dad, I was just finished my sophomore year of high school. We came in from school. We got some really good food, and he sat down and told us like, "Hey, I have about a month left of life." He had cancer for 2 years up until that point, and he sat down and said that. And I remember my first reaction was this: I literally got up, I walked upstairs, went into my parents' bedroom, and turned on the TV because I immediately wanted to get out of the pain I was in. And then when he passed, I remember my mom like stressed out of her mind, because my dad just passed. I remember she was like, dealing with little kids over here, my younger siblings over here, dealing with my older siblings, dealing with the situation. I remember the next day she just handed me her credit card and said, "Hey, go get whatever you want for lunch." And I remember it was this moment, like I can remember looking at the card and then going to get Panda Express and like eating it and finding this release and this relief and almost this disappearance. Like I was able to disappear from the pain I was in. And so what do I do in my life now? When I experience intensity or stress, I want to disappear. And it's because I'm trying to keep that, 16-year-old boy safe. I'm trying to keep him from having to experience what he experienced in that time and get him out of it. But again, so that's the reality, is it's almost a safety reality. Like it has nothing to do with, if I was given all the food I wanted, it wouldn't help the situation. And if I was able to watch 10 movies in a row, it's not helping the situation. It's the action itself that I used as a response to an area that I still have habitually that is affecting my life. And so I think that's just an example.
Well, that's right.
Of what you're sharing.
No, because that's the flight response. So that there was a situation that happened, and you're in your fight or flight, and you choose flight in a particular way, and it becomes a pattern in your life. And then to what you were saying earlier, Sam, there's these times where we make these vows because fight pulls in us, and we make the commitment that will never happen to me. Right? You'll see this a lot with like sexual trauma, especially in men at young ages, if they're exposed to things early, or if they're touched inappropriately at a young age, things like that. What will happen is like oh man, like that put me in such a vulnerable place that I was exposed, humiliated. I don't know what to do with those emotions. So in the future, you'll find those men to be sexually pursuing many things because I'm going to be on the offense, never on the defense, right? That's a fight response that has now become my norm of operation, right? And when your MO becomes exactly what we were talking about, that's when the tail starts to be eaten, right? Is because it's like, oh wait, that way I felt vulnerable. Now I feel like I'm imposing that on people, and I'm not even trying. I'm actually trying to run from that. Yeah, I'm trying to run from that. But wait, the fruit's the exact same. Like the fruit's the exact, and then that's when stuff really hits the fan. When you're like, oh man, I've become the thing I feared, and that's. But again, if we're redeeming failure, that is a great place to be as a guy. Like when you get that, yes, it's going to take your breath away. It's going to mess you up. But if you have brothers in your life, if you have mentors, if you have people you trust, like when you get there, like if you're listening to this podcast, like that's the moment to find the most trusted person in your life and just be like, I just came up against this.
Well, and that is literally the identity.
Freedom's on the other side.
Well, and think about that. Like, if you don't become aware of this, then what do you begin to believe? It's such a hard thing for you to overcome that it becomes who you are.
Yeah.
And so that is what happens with so many men.
Totally.
Like men, and there's a lot of categories you could say this in, but like I talk to so many men who are just like, yeah, I just have a little too much testosterone. I'm a little just too, I'm a little just too sexually crazed, or I'm a little, I'm just a player, or I'm just, no one actually says that anymore, but like, like I just hook up with a lot of women because I'm just like the man, or whatever it is. And it's like, no, maybe you were violated, so you became the violator. Maybe. So it's amazing because if you don't have the awareness, you believe that that's who you are, while it's actually just something that happened to you that you can get out of.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I think that kind of presents in itself kind of three pathways that we can live this out, right? Like there's this, you either become the victim of your circumstances and believe you deserve it somehow, or live from it constantly. You become maybe this villain that is, I think there are probably people who it's like, I'm just going to become the villain of my story. And
if I run everybody over, who cares? Because at least I'm getting out on the win.
Yeah. But then there's this third way of being the victor, right? And I think that's where I think most men listening to this podcast want to be, is I don't think anyone wants to be living as a victim that's like constantly entrapped to their circumstances, whether they were, when they were super young in a super formidable time of life, or whether it happened, when you were in high school or in college, like these different lowercase t or uppercase t traumatic moments happen in life. No one wants to be the victim, right? So I think we have this choice of how do we get to that path of the victor? And I think it doesn't happen overnight. Like I think that the two of you and I both know this, that there's no easy path to it, right? There's this reality that the obstacle is the way, that there is something intrinsic to the human experience that cannot become whole without pain, right? There is this value of suffering. And I think like looking from a Christian perspective, it's like one of my favorite verses all throughout the Bible is Psalm 23. And it's because of this reality that God promises that when we go through the valley of the shadow of death, fear not, for I will be with you, for my rod and my staff will comfort you. And it's not this promise of I'm going to take you around the valley of a shadow of death. It's you're going through the valley of the shadow of death. There's something about that you have to go through something, and that going through it forms you. And I think that that's one of the things that we all have to understand is there's no man is an island. No one listening to this, and none of the guys at this table are an island. All of us have gone through some pretty hard stuff in life. And everyone who is ever going to live will go through some pretty hard stuff in life. It's not about how, it's like the Rocky Balboa movie says, it's not about how hard you get hit, it's how hard you get hit and keep going. There's this reality of life is going to impose its will on you, right? And we can either become passive bystanders to life, or we can get up and rise above, but it's never going to be this easy path, right? The obstacle is the way.
Yeah, isn't that, it's funny because that's one of the ways that we actually know we're alive. It put out the dichotomy of like when you're in a dream versus when you're in reality. Like let's just say that you had a super vivid dream and you're like, oh, wow, was that real? Like the way you know it's not real is because you never have to brush up against something. You never have to put your foot against the floor where the floor is then pushing back and you can feel it. You never experience like the aches of like getting up after a workout and getting in the shower and like you don't like those are the things that actually like prove reality to us. And so like it's worth us as men like wrestling with that. Like I don't want a dream life. Like I don't want a dream world. Like I like the tension. I like the like, oh, I got to rub shoulders with this guy, whether it be in basketball or whether it be at a decision-making table, you know, like I have to rub shoulders here. I have to like, because the moment that we're trying to escape that reality, what begins happening is we try to make a counter reality, and that's where we fail. Like when you begin wearing masks in your life as a man, you are destined for failure. The moment that you're like, this reality is too chaotic for me, I'm going to create this alternative persona when I'm with this group of people, or I'm going to create this alternative persona in my pursuit in business, even though I don't bring that home, or I'm going to pursue this alternative persona when I'm traveling around the country speaking, but when I'm at home, I'm different. Because what's happening is I'm living counter realities instead of just real reality. Like I'm Brad everywhere I go. I'm married to Nina everywhere I go. I'm the father of Eliza everywhere I go. I'm brothers to Noah and Sam everywhere I go. Like when that becomes reality, we live from something, not for something. And anytime we find ourselves living for that next thing or for this applause or for this attainment, we're going to find ourselves on the brink of collapse. And we know that, like we all know that.
Well, and so this is great. So I would say if you're listening to this, like it should offer some sort of consolation in this reality that like, look, you're screwed up and there's a reason for it, right? Like, because so many of us just think we're screwed up and there's no reason. We're just screwed up and we're different from everybody else.
Yep.
One, we're all screwed up and there's a reason for it. And we can be grateful that we're experiencing whatever we're experiencing because we know that's simply a sign towards the fact that something's messed up, but also a sign towards the reality that you can get out of it. And so what would suck is for you to leave this podcast being like, okay, I'm just effed up and that's life.
Yeah.
And so what it's been such a gift to walk with both of you guys for so long. And I know you guys are doing things in your life to be a victor, right? Because again, you brought this up, like imposition or disposition, right? Like there, you may have a disposition towards something, but that doesn't mean that you're stuck in it for your whole life. Now, I don't want to just say all these words and be like, okay, I'm effed up, but you have a chance out there. What are some of the steps that you can take practically to start working towards that victory? It's not just going to be you thinking, waking up in the morning and just like talking to yourself in the mirror and saying, I'm not going to do this anymore. Like, what are the steps you take to go through?
Yeah.
I think one of the big ones that I know has been beneficial for me and many other men is being able to talk to someone. So I think specifically within the context of counseling, like I think that I think as men, sometimes we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to talk to people. We don't want to admit that we need help. But I think like one of the biggest ways you ever experience getting freedom is you have to acknowledge you don't have it together, right? That is like, so if you want to go on being a pretender, like admit you don't have a problem, like try to keep convincing yourself you don't have a problem. But every single one of us has problems. Now, are all of them meritorious of you going to seek counseling? Like I think sometimes we do live in this juxtaposition of probably an overly therapied world, right?
Yes.
So I don't think every solution to every man's issue is therapy or counseling. I don't want to say that. But when I look on the scale of most men I know, do they have an issue with going to therapy or going to counseling and not going to therapy or counseling? I would say that most men I know don't do that. Like don't go to counseling or don't go to therapy, right? So I would say that most men would benefit from going to counseling. And I think it could be low key. You're not signing up for the rest of your life. You can do your research. Like I think for me over the last year and a half, I have done different stints, right? My wife and I went through a really hard transition in life. We moved very abruptly. It brought a lot of things up in our marriage. And we're like, okay, we should go to marriage counseling. So that's what we did. We went there for 6 weeks. Are we still going to marriage counseling? No. Is my life better because I went to marriage counseling? Yes. I think most married couples probably should go to marriage counseling at some point. When I look to my own life in counseling and talking through some of the things that have happened to me in my life that I realized were being, places that I was living from that I did not like in my work life, in my marriage, in my fatherhood, I sought out a counselor. For me as a man, it was a men's counselor. And I talked through some things with him for probably 4.5 months. Do I see him every other week like I did then? No. But my life is better now because I did.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, just to erase the stigma of counseling is big. Like, you're not a wuss. You're not like being a baby. You're not admitting defeat. Like, it's those moments where we can really try to find freedom. So I would say go to counseling, but not generally blanketly, but just I would say it's a consider
path.
exploring.
That's a path.
Yeah,
that's a path. Man, I want to go a few different ways. I think what I would say is control the controllables. So one of the things that's blessed me the most is when I look back in my life, even the times that were traumatic, where something was imposed on me, or where I imposed something in a circumstance that wasn't appropriate to it. Being able to look at that and recognize, like, oh, okay, I was young and immature and didn't know better, but also like I did respond to that the way I did. Right. So like not in a blame way. So hear what I'm saying, not what I'm not. Like, if you're listening today, I'm not saying going back and being like, and therefore everything's my fault and I'm the worst ever. But what I am saying is, like, the moment that I can say I actually did respond in a way that I no longer want to, I'm controlling a controllable. Because all I have to change is, if that happens to me again, I'm not going to respond in that way. But that, like, is super helpful. I think we live in a society today where we're always trying to find an external problem. Yeah. So it's always like, oh, well, honestly, those guys just don't get me. They don't get me. And, and honestly, the reason I don't like get close to many of the guys in my life is just because, like, I'm kind of like to myself. I like doing my own thing. You know, the reason that I'm not, as vulnerable with my wife as I probably should be is because at the end of the day, like, I know my stuff. It's like, no. Like, owning all of that, like owning the fact that I'm not close to brothers, and like, why is that? And like, I think the more that we can take responsibility, the more that we can begin controlling in our lives what is controllable. And the thing that's controllable is always me. Like me, how I respond to tension in my life, how I respond to suffering, how I respond to someone saying something that is taken by me to be a challenge or whatever. So again, what I would say is control the controllables. Yeah. The most controllable thing in your life is you. There are things that begin to be controllable outside of you, but I think it's probably unhelpful in this circumstance to talk about it. Like, look at you. How did you respond even in broken situations? How can you respond now? Yeah. I think that'll get us on the edge of being victors through failure.
Yep. Yeah. I love that. I think, controlling the controllables. I think counseling's huge. I actively go to counseling, and it's incredibly helpful because, again, I think I heard something recently that I agreed with a lot, and it was this reality of just like, we just need to keep, like, a lot of times we as men, we're just like, we just need to keep suffering. Like, suffering's the way, like all this stuff. But in reality, like, we're just saying that because we don't want to actually go through the real suffering. Like, it's more manageable to just do this, like this rigid, shove it down reality, because if we open it back up, it's going to be way more painful. And so we're like, suffering, but then we don't actually go to the depth of what's under that, which is way more suffering. And so I think that's been huge for me with counseling, is like, oh, this is the real suffering when I have to open up this box that I never wanted to open again, right? Yeah. The last thing I'll add to this is simply just this reality of do victorious behaviors to start recognizing you can be victorious. Because I've been in a place in counseling where I've been like, man, do I just submit to the reality that I'm going to struggle in these areas for the rest of my life because of the pain that's happened in my life? And one of the things that's been so helpful is just practicing a few victorious behaviors every day. And so something I've implemented in my life is cold plunging. And it's been, I'll talk about this like 1,000 times on the podcast, but what it's done is it's allowed for me to step into 36-degree water every morning, fully submerge my body in it for 5 minutes, and come out of it and be okay. Like, that's been huge. Yeah. Or like, and then right after that, I lift for about 30 minutes, and I do that every day. And it's been something in my life that I'm like, okay, That seemed impossible. I just got out of a warm bed. The last thing I want to do is go into 20-degree air and then get into 35-degree water. But when I do it, I experience it and then I'm like, holy crap, I did that and I can do it again tomorrow. And I think if you start experiencing victorious behaviors, you have way more confidence when you go into the deep recesses of your life where there was pain and there was suffering and it caused you to act a certain way that you've been acting in for 30 years, 20 years, 15 years, whatever it is. You're going to be like, well, I know I did a little thing that made me victorious in this other area, so I can probably keep stepping into it. Right. So,
yeah, and I think like listen to and read about people who were victorious, right? Like I think that's one of the inspiration is something that is I think could be very undervalued as just cheesy, right? Like this, we can be inspired by people who are the heroes of their story or the victor of their story. Sure. Like I think about there's like so many of these different individuals, like Viktor Frankl, like John Paul II. Like John Paul II is the person who has come to mind during this. It's like the dude, his mom died, his brother died, his father died. Like everyone close to him died, and then his entire country.
That time he was like 18.
Yeah, and his entire country was taken over by like the communists, right? Taken over by Germany, and then he actively chooses to live a life of holiness and live a life of virtue and live a life not as a victim of like, oh my gosh, poor me, my mom died or my brother died, my dad died, and my country's taken over. He lived in such a way that was not like like the tendencies maybe of most of us to be like, oh, I'm going to gravitate towards these areas. He envisioned who he wanted to be and then pursued that person, right? Like not in a way where it's like he was absolutely perfect. But there are so many stories of saints, if you're Catholic, or different like heroes throughout history.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like, and each and every one of these people basically said, "I'm not going to be defined by the circumstances that happened to me, whether it was, like trauma from the outside world that was imposed on me, or something disposition-wise that I lived from." So I just think be encouraged by people too. Get around people who have been freed from things. It doesn't have to be the exact thing you are pursuing freedom from, but be accustomed to knowing that freedom is real and freedom can happen.
Yeah. And celebrate the small victories along the way. I think both of your things can connect. It's just like, I think as men, sometimes we're too prideful to celebrate the 1% increase today. Like I made my bed this morning and I was a pile the day before and I did it today. And so that's a win. Like I think sometimes and again, you guys know, but hear what I'm saying, not what I'm not, if you're listening, like set the bar sufficiently low that an idiot like you can hit it tomorrow. So like, because what that does is it allows you to continue to increase it. Now there's other areas of your life where you should never move the bar no matter what, leave it high. And if you miss it, allow mercy to fill the gap. But we could talk about that at a different time. In this circumstance, it's like tomorrow, what's one victorious behavior you can have tomorrow? And how can you not take yourself so seriously that you'd actually celebrate it? Because that would begin changing you. Yeah. It would begin changing you if you're like, that's a win. Or actually, like the first thing I did when I got home is I actually went to my wife and I kissed her and asked how her day was. I didn't come in and complain about mine. I didn't like big win. Okay. Like those are the things that when you start celebrating, you're going to begin looking at like, where are the other areas where wins and victories can be brought into my life. And that's where you erase the patterns of failure and you begin the patterns of victory, I think.
Amen.
Yeah. That's awesome. Any final thoughts? What do you guys think?
No, I love it. I love that you said that. That's one of the things that I did when I started doing these cold plunges probably 3 months ago. And the thing I did was there's a podcast called the Founders Podcast, and it has pretty much every person that would be considered a founder or just a great individual throughout all of history. Michael Jordan's on there, Kobe's on there, Winston Churchill's on there, Tiger Woods is on there, just and what I would do is every morning during the only time I listen to that podcast, Coach K, Nick Saban, the only time I would listen to that podcast is when I would get into the cold plunge and lift, because it just was. I needed that inspiration because I needed to believe, and belief is like that first step. You have to believe that you can actually do it in order to do it.
Yeah.
So
agreed. Well, moving into kind of where the rubber meets the road. So the principal objectives for the next couple weeks. We can report back. Like I said, I know it's been a minute since we were able to record last, but principal objectives from last time. How did we shape up with those?
Yeah, mine was a big flopping 0. So I did not do it well at all. But that's okay because
it's apropos.
Progress over perfection.
It's
right?
apropos.
We're going we're going forward. So I'm actually gonna pick it back up. So what it was I think I used the word spelunking. So going into the deep,
verified,
the deep parts, the dark parts, and asking why. So I think one of my favorite guys, Father Mike Schmitz, he used this term of non-judgmental glances. So being able to look at your life in a way where it's like you're not harping on yourself, you're not shaming yourself, you're looking at it as a non-judgmental glance, as a data point.
Seeing as it is.
Yes. And so I think I'm really going to try to do this, and I'll say how I will. So I've got this this journal that is meant to be used every day. I only use it for like planning the hours of the day. It's called the Monk Manual. So it's got hourly things, and it's got my to-do list. And I really only tapped into it for work. And it's kind of regrettable because there's an entire portion of it that's meant to be used at night when you reflect on your day. And so I'm going to use that in a way where I can look at my day. Because there are moments, like we were in a meeting today where I was a complete ass. Like, I'm going to be honest, I need to apologize to you earlier. I was an ass. Like, and to Ben, I've already talked to Ben. But being able to look at my life and say, missed the mark there. Or that was where the victory was. And so I think just diving into that of non-judgmental glances, looking at my life and observing them as data points and trying to grow from there.
Yeah, I love it.
That's sweet. Yeah, mine was all about basically doing an interior reflection kind of at the end of my day and doing it consistently every day. And about a week after I did that, I didn't do it a single time that week. And then it's been a couple weeks since we've been together. So after that, I dropped it to 3 times a week. I've done that twice now, 2 weeks in a row at 3 times a week. And so I increased it this week to 4. And I'm going to keep building that. So yeah, that's how I did on mine.
Yeah, mine was just kind of in alignment. I was talking last time about how I'm trying to just stay true to the things I'm already committing to and just kind of attaching the things as they come. And last time I was talking about how like at the end of my night when I do my examine, like when I encounter the areas where I feel like I really failed, like really asking why. And I feel like it was like I think mixed review. Like I think there were nights where I remembered that like, oh, I'm going to really ask why here. And there were nights where I was just like, okay, Lord, let your grace be sufficient tomorrow in that area because I was tired and I waited too late or whatever. So I want to just keep doing that. I think just having that as part of my examine every night is something that I think would be advantageous. Failure part 2 today.
I realized I did not. Oh wait.
I already went that route.
You did yours. Yeah. You do yours. Next.
Okay. Yeah. I think, man, I was inspired by a lot of things. I think one of the things that I think I can put into practice this week is really like in my time in the morning. So just the quiet time that I take set aside. I think I would really like between now and when we record next, just to take part of that time and sit with the areas where I'm avoiding things. So I was just motivated as I was listening to us kind of like bounce ideas back and forth of just, there's still areas in my life that I avoid. There's just, I call it maturity because I know where it's at and I don't have to go there. But I think instead, like actually going there, like, oh, I'm avoiding that. Is there a reason for that? And then maybe like if there would be the grace there to engage the things I'm avoiding after kind of finding the through line there.
Yeah, that's sweet. So I was in habit of keeping my phone out of my room for a long time, and then I started traveling a lot this last semester for work purposes. And I just because you're in a hotel room and you have your phone in your room, and so when I would get back home, I'd be in between trips. I'd just keep my phone in my room, and so right now I'm in between a couple of trips. But what I want to do is allow for the end of my night and the beginning of my morning to be silent. And I think I know I love to get on YouTube right away and see new information, new news, new sports, whatever. And I think what I want to do is I want to create silence in those spaces because I am running from something, right? Like I'm running from pain in those moments, whether that's just the pain of being tired, whether that's the pain of like not feeling like I can get to sleep and I need to distract myself so that I can distract myself into falling asleep, whatever it is. I want to really be able to put my phone away, whether that's like read, going to sleep or whatever, or just be in silence, wake up, don't touch that phone until after my workout. That's what I want to be able to step into this week.
Nice. I like it. Well, there it is. Principal objectives.
Well, this has been Modern Man, guys. Remember, don't be a douche.
Yeah, sponsored by Marlboro. It's been good to be with you guys. Thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Boom.